Why Japanese seniors eat salt like crazy, but keep their blood pressure low. This sounds impossible, right? The traditional Japanese diet is loaded with salt. Miso soup, pickled vegetables, soy sauce on everything. Serious sodium intake daily. Logically, you'd expect sky-high blood pressure, but many older Japanese adults don't have the extreme hypertension rates you'd expect. Population studies show that in older Japanese adults, salt intake doesn't always strongly correlate with higher blood pressure when other lifestyle factors are present. One large study found a surprisingly complex relationship between sodium intake and systolic blood pressure, especially among seniors with healthier overall habits. So what's actually happening? The potassium factor. The first major piece, potassium. This underrated mineral helps your kidneys flush out excess sodium and relaxes blood vessel walls. Sodium tightens blood vessels, potassium loosens them. They compete inside your body for control over fluid balance and vascular tone. Think of it like a tug of war in every cell. When sodium dominates, your body retains water and blood vessels constrict. When potassium is present in sufficient amounts, it counteracts these effects. Your kidneys excrete more sodium when potassium levels are adequate, preventing fluid retention that drives blood pressure up. Traditional Japanese diets are packed with potassium-rich foods: seaweed, beans, leafy greens, sweet potatoes, mushrooms, fruits, and fish. Even miso soup typically contains tofu, seaweed, and vegetables. While salt comes in, potassium comes in simultaneously, buffering sodium's effect. This isn't accidental. The traditional diet evolved over centuries, and these food combinations create a natural balance that protects cardiovascular health. Long-term research backs this up. A Japanese cohort study found that people with lower sodium to potassium ratios had smaller increases in blood pressure over time, even when total sodium intake was relatively high. It's not just how much salt you eat, it's how much potassium you eat with it. Portion size matters. The food is salty, but servings are smaller. A bowl of miso soup in Japan is usually half the size of Western restaurant portions. Same with rice bowls, side dishes, and sauces. Even though food tastes saltier, the total sodium per meal is often lower than it appears. The fermentation advantage: much of that salt comes from fermented foods: miso, natto, soy sauce, pickles. These foods contain bioactive compounds and beneficial bacteria that support gut health. Gut health connects directly to inflammation, insulin sensitivity, and blood vessel function. Chronic inflammation stiffens arteries. Lower inflammation keeps them flexible. Salt alone doesn't tell the full story. Potassium, portion size, and fermentation all change how salt actually affects the body. But even with a balanced diet, lifestyle determines how your blood vessels respond. Japanese seniors have one daily habit that quietly trains their arteries to stay young: the movement secret. When people discuss health, they obsess over food, but blood pressure is massively influenced by daily physical activity. Here's where the Japanese approach diverges dramatically from Western fitness culture. Japanese seniors move constantly, not gym workouts, life movement. Walking to the store, gardening, cleaning, standing on trains, squatting, carrying groceries, biking. This low-level daily activity keeps blood vessels flexible. It's not about intensity, it's about frequency and consistency throughout the day. Your arteries aren't rigid pipes. They stretch and relax with every heartbeat. When you move more, your body produces more nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes blood vessels, directly lowering blood pressure. This process is use-dependent, meaning the more you move, the more nitric oxide your vascular system produces. Research shows that people who walk more steps daily have lower arterial stiffness. And arterial stiffness is one of the strongest predictors of hypertension and stroke risk in older adults. Even light movement for 10 minutes every hour can trigger beneficial vascular responses. This is why traditional Japanese lifestyle patterns, which naturally incorporate movement throughout the day rather than concentrating it in one workout session, appear so protective. Body weight and inflammation: Japan has one of the lowest obesity rates in the world, including among seniors. Less belly fat means less chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation tightens blood vessels and disrupts how kidneys handle sodium. Even if two people eat identical amounts of salt, the leaner person usually handles it better. Stress management through routine. Chronic stress pumps out cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that raise blood pressure by tightening blood vessels and increasing fluid retention. Many Japanese seniors follow structured daily routines: morning group calisthenics, neighborhood clubs, walking groups, festivals, social rituals. These aren't just cultural traditions, they stabilize stress hormones. Long-term research consistently links social connection and routine with lower cardiovascular risk. Lower stress equals less vascular constriction equals lower blood pressure. Japanese doctors still recommend lowering sodium, but they understand that salt interacts with movement, stress, body fat, and inflammation. The SONIC study showed that sodium intake alone didn't explain blood pressure changes in older Japanese adults, unless lifestyle factors were accounted for. The salt isn't magically safe. It's being neutralized by an entire lifestyle system. But there's one eating habit Japanese seniors follow that directly blunts blood pressure spikes after meals. It's subtle, simple, and almost nobody in the West does it: the meal structure advantage. Traditional Japanese meals aren't just salty and balanced, they're built around slow digestion and stable blood sugar. This matters enormously because blood sugar and blood pressure are more connected than most people realize. Fiber is foundational: seaweed, vegetables, beans, mushrooms, root vegetables, loaded with fiber. Fiber slows how fast glucose enters your bloodstream, meaning smaller insulin spikes after meals. But fiber does more than just slow sugar absorption. It also feeds beneficial gut bacteria, which produce compounds that help regulate blood pressure independently. The gut-brain-heart axis is real, and fiber is one of its key regulators. Why does insulin matter for blood pressure? High insulin tells your kidneys to retain sodium and signals your blood vessels to tighten. When blood sugar spikes hard, blood pressure often spikes too. High-fiber meals flatten that curve. Even with salt in the meal, the body doesn't react as aggressively. This is why a salty bowl of vegetable-rich miso soup affects your blood pressure differently than salty processed food with no fiber. Green tea plays a role. Most Japanese seniors drink tea daily, especially green tea. Green tea contains catechins, compounds that improve endothelial function. Endothelium is the inner lining of your blood vessels. When healthy, vessels relax more easily. Think of it as internal lubrication for your circulatory system. Clinical trials show that regular green tea intake is linked to modest but real reductions in blood pressure by improving nitric oxide availability and vascular flexibility. The effect isn't dramatic from a single cup, but consumed daily over years, it contributes meaningfully to overall cardiovascular protection. The sodium to potassium balance appears again. Multiple long-term studies show that people with higher sodium to potassium ratios experience larger increases in blood pressure over time, even in Japan. Those with better balance stay more stable. This ratio may be more important than absolute sodium intake for predicting long-term cardiovascular outcomes. The Western contrast: compare this to a Western diet. High salt often comes from ultra-processed foods: chips, frozen meals, fast food, snacks. These foods are low in potassium, low in fiber, and high in refined carbs. That combination, low potassium, insulin spikes, inflammation, creates a blood pressure nightmare. Japanese seniors eat mostly whole foods. Even sweet treats tend to be traditional, eaten occasionally, and not loaded with refined sugar and additives. The real lesson: blood pressure is not controlled by one thing. It's a systems problem. Salt interacts with movement, stress, potassium, fiber, body fat, gut health, blood sugar, and social routines. Japanese seniors don't just eat salty food, they stack protective habits that cancel out much of the damage. No, salt isn't suddenly healthy. High sodium still increases stroke risk. Japanese doctors still warn about it. But context matters. The Japanese lifestyle creates a context that protects blood vessels. Let's break it down clearly. Salt alone doesn't determine blood pressure. Balance does. Potassium buffers sodium's effects. Daily movement keeps arteries flexible. Low stress reduces hormonal blood pressure spikes. High fiber stabilizes insulin and sodium handling. Green tea improves vascular function. Whole foods prevent inflammation overload. That's why Japanese seniors can eat salty foods and still maintain relatively healthy blood pressure. Your next move: here's the real question. Which one of these habits could you start this week that would lower your blood pressure more than cutting salt alone? If you had to choose just one habit to start today, which would move your numbers fastest? Daily walking and movement, adding potassium-rich vegetables to every meal, drinking green tea, reducing processed foods? The answer isn't the same for everyone. But the Japanese example shows us that blood pressure control isn't about perfection in one area. It's about creating a lifestyle system where multiple protective factors work together. Start with the habit that fits your life best, then build from there.